Welcome back to Occupy the Media. Follow the conversations on our Facebook and Twitter pages where you'll be able to send us messages about some of the topics that we're doing today, namely the home foreclosure crisis is what we're talking about. I'm going to read one of those messages really quick. Larry M. says, foreclosure is an issue that is often overlooked in America, especially in Black and Hispanic communities. Glad that this is becoming a hot topic at the national level. Well, thanks for your feedback and joining the conversation, Larry. So in this segment, we want to talk about how the corporate media is covering issues that impact the rest of us. So on the line via Skype, we have Rebecca Burns, a reporter for In These Times. Thanks so much for joining us, Rebecca.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, the anti-NATO protests in Chicago, it's a very heated topic. We showed you a video, or viewers a video earlier in the show from those demonstrations, but not everyone is covering these protests in the same way. Rebecca, you were there in Chicago for In These Times. What are you noticing in the difference between what you saw on the ground and what people are seeing on their television screens?
Sure. Well, I think one of the sort of most striking things is just the numbers that were being reported for Sunday's march, which is, I think, one of the largest anti-war demonstrations that we've seen in the U.S. in several years. A lot of corporate media outlets were reporting that several hundred people were there. But if you look at the aerial photography, you had many different delegations from around the country and many activists from around the world participating. Certainly there were easily 5,000 people there. Another thing that I would say is, there is the description that the NATO summit themselves and the militarization of the city were a bother to ordinary Chicagoans, but what was really bad was protests that were going on. So sort of undercutting the idea that and unions, nurses in Chicago were very much the ones who are participating in these protests and opposing the way that warfare abroad really brings austerity back home.
But Rebecca, it sounds like these are often the ways, the complaints at least, that activists and demonstrators have in the differences between the way that things happened from their point of view and the way that the mainstream media reports it. Was there anything sort of that was unique to this particular event in terms of that discrepancy?
Sure. Well, I guess it really stood out to me in these demonstrations was I think organizers really did do an excellent job of sort of linking international issues and struggles with local ones. So, we've been seeing all along the sort of criticism that the Occupy movement's demands are too fragmented, too diverse. And that's something that's been echoed again in these demonstrations. But I think it's sort of really striking that media coverage hasn't captured the cohesive way that the connection between military spending and then lack of funding for services are sort of two sides of the same coin.
Don.
Yeah, I just want to make a comment on, what the mainstream media, another aspect of this Sunday's demonstration the mainstream media did not focus on is the large international representation. There were people that came from, first of all, from all over the country, but a large delegation from Canada. People came over from Europe. The anti-war movement in Germany was represented. The anti-austerity movement in Southern Europe was represented. This was truly a global demonstration against the power of NATO, a military alliance that is carrying out war against the people of Afghanistan and Iraq.
Rebecca, you've also been covering and attending just strictly Occupy Wall Street protests and demonstrations. Did you notice any difference between the issues that were being raised at this anti-NATO protest, the crowds that were involved? How much did Occupy Wall Street actually motivate or have anything to do with these protests?
Sure. Well, the largest demonstration that took place on Sunday was sort of spearheaded by a local anti-war coalition as well as Iraq Veterans Against the War. And that very much sort of had a sense of the human rights crisis represented by the ongoing war in Afghanistan. And I think Occupy, particularly Occupy Chicago's concerns, were to, as I said, link these issues of global militarism with the cuts in services that groups have been seeing here in Chicago. So there's a moment of tension there, and I think the tone of the demonstration that the veterans sort of set when they returned their medals was a very somber one. So there's, sort of a distinction made between the two topics, but I think that the organizers did a great job of linking them.
Yeah. So Marcy, the difference between how the mainstream media covers these large protests and things that we saw at NATO, should we ever expect some sort of change to happen? I mean, when people go in, is it a thing like you always have to create and tune into your own forms of media, or is there a way to structure some of these protests so that you are able to get your message out in a more efficient way?
Well, I think it is all about your point of view and your angle and what side you're coming from and what you expect and just preconceived notions of things, because I think it would be really hard for protesters to come out and for everyone on the other end to see them and see them in a different way. If you are just a regular Chicagoan who maybe isn't very political, you may just think, gosh, they're blocking my block, with all these police cars, and be dissatisfied with it. Whereas if maybe you are a little more political, then you understand and you get it. So I think it's just kind of the nature of the beast.
Okay, so moving on, the question we are asking our friends on Facebook is, how do you feel about cities like Denver banning the homeless from sleeping outside? So Dave wrote in and said, I think that we should leave the homeless where they are. Candy says, I think that this would be just fine if we would build more shelters for them. Janet writes, have we really stooped this low to where we are now targeting the homeless? Okay, so Rebecca, tell us a little bit about where you see the rest of the Occupy Wall Street movement going now that we've had May Day, we've had this anti-NATO protest. Is it a thing where we'll see more large-scale protests going on, or will it kind of retreat into localized actions and organizing?
Sure. Well, I think there was certainly a lot of energy going into these demonstrations at this time, and it sort of remains to be seen, where that energy and momentum will go next. Certainly, I think, a common criticism of mass demonstrations at summits is that they're sort of symbolic. They don't accomplish very much. But I think my impression is that a lot of really useful connections were made this weekend between both different Occupy groups and between sort of more local coalitions and Occupy groups. So here in Chicago, we've seen, increasing collaboration between Occupy Chicago and groups like one called the Mental Health Movement that's fighting closures of 6 of the city's 12 mental health clinics. So one feeling I have is that sort of collaboration of support of Occupy groups to sort of community-led struggles and occupations.
So you're more interested in these collaborations that are created or birthed out of these large-scale protests.
Yeah, I think the coalitions that are built and negotiated out of these sort of large symbolic demonstrations can be one really constructive outcome.
Okay, well, Rebecca Burns, you're a writer for In These Times. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
All right, we're going to take another quick break, but don't go away. We'll take some more calls. Again, the number is 877-575-FSTV. What do you think about the excessive force being used to remove families from their foreclosed homes? But first, we sent a camera crew out to hear what the 99% thinks about the Denver City Council trying to criminalize homeless people who camp outside. Here's what they had to say.
I don't think it's an initiative that will be very effective with any of the people out here.
There's no place for them to go. I mean, if there were enough shelters, people wouldn't be having to sleep on the streets all the time. And it doesn't make any sense. Like, they're just going to end up getting arrested and filling up the jails.
This is absolutely wrong. That, to sit here and say that it's a crime to not have a home?
Hello, I'm Antoinette June with your Occupy update. Hackers Anonymous is calling for the national occupation of everything on Monday, November 5th. For more information and details, visit meetup.com/occupy together.